Alrighty, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the first ConverZations of 2021. Unfortunately, we can't be in person, which is very sad, but we are able to come together here on Zoom, which is very exciting for both Michelle and I. I just want to take a second to thank Faye Heston for sponsoring ConverZations again this year. That is very, very kind of her. We really appreciate everything that she is doing. I also want to remind you that this is a conversation, so Michelle will present and talk for a while. If you have any questions, though, feel free to drop them in the chat at any time, and I can see all your questions there. And if you have, we'll have time at the end for questions at the very end. So there will be an open time where you can actually talk back and forth with one another. So that will be happening just like normal. It'll just be via a screen. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Michelle.
Well, hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you today. It's not what we had planned to have happen originally when I signed up to do this conversation today. And, you know, honestly, when I first started preparing for this today, it was not, it wasn't the lecture that I had planned. So I struggled with it a little bit, I have to admit, just because so much has changed over the last 6 months or so since we shut down the orchestra. So at first I was going to talk about, you know, just what I do on a regular basis and kind of give you a little insight into what it's like to run an orchestra. But I decided then now to talk about more of what, I've just got a big sunshine coming through on my head. I decided to talk more about what it's like now. And we've made a lot of changes to the season, and I'm sure people have a lot of questions of what's coming up for us. So I thought that we would talk more about, a little bit briefly about what we used to do and now what it's been like in the last 6 months, and then what it's going to look like in the next 9 to 12 months. So as Rachel said, please feel free to shoot any questions in the chat box. And we can, if there's something that Rachel feels to interrupt me with, that's totally fine. And then there will be time at the end. So I started thinking about this, and 1 year ago today, we had just finished up our Labor Day concert that we had done in North Canton. We were in the middle of auditions for the main orchestra. So we had, hundreds of people coming in and into the Z and sitting through auditions. The youth symphony and the chorus had just started rehearsing, and we were about to open one of our biggest seasons in years. We had, we were planning on 7 Masterworks concerts and 5 Pops concerts, not to mention all of the Divergent and educational stuff. So it was going to be a really big season, and we were really excited about it and really looking forward to what that was going to be like for our audience and for us. Gerhard and I had started planning his season, his 40th season, which is this current year. And we were really excited about the programming that we were coming up with. A little side note on how we end up planning his season. He and I tend to spend a couple breakfasts, usually at his favorite, Bob Evans, over lots of bacon and eggs, and we kind of chat through what he wants to have happen his season. And his 40th, he'd been thinking about it for a long time, and there were some things that we had on a list to do for quite a while. But then we had decided on doing a series of 7 classical concerts, obviously, but it was going to include a world premiere called The Planets, which was going to be a new version of The Planets based on Holst's The Planets with a piano solo and orchestra. So we were really excited about that. We love to do world premieres, and those of us who have been around for a while, we've been doing those for quite some time. And then we were also going to be doing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in honor of Beethoven's 250th birthday. That was going to feature the chorus. It'd been quite some time, not actually that long since we've done it, 5 years, I think, but it's always a wonderful piece to hear and to perform. So I know that the chorus and the orchestra were both looking forward to that one. And then finally, I think probably the biggest thing that we were going to be doing was in January, we had planned to do Shostakovich's 7th Symphony, which is a mammoth work. It's about 70 minutes long, I believe. And Gerhardt was going to be doing somewhat of a lecture in the first half of the concert to kind of talk about why this piece is important. And it was written in honor of the invasion of Leningrad. So there was also going to be, along with this movie, or with the program, a movie that he had done with a graduate student from the University of Austin, and is very moving, and really it goes along with the piece very well, and it has actual footage from the invasion, and it was going to be just a really exciting and thrilling work that we were going to perform. So then let's fast forward to March 10th, 2020. So I had just gotten back from Miami. I actually just got remarried, and we had just come back from our honeymoon then, about 5 days earlier. And COVID, was just starting to be talked about. That was, if you think back, there was a few cases. We found out later that there was actually a lot more in Miami than we knew. Otherwise, we probably would have not gone. But it was just a few. They were on the West Coast. Nobody was really talking about it here. But that evening, I was in bed and I was reading an article, and it started talking about the responsibility of leaders, and especially leaders of an arts organization, and the what's the word I want to look for? The responsibility of a leader to really protect their staff and their musicians and their patrons, and that we really needed to be thinking about the severity of this disease. And I decided right then and there that if one person caught COVID, that was going to be too many for me. And if it was because of me or because of the CSO, I couldn't let that happen. So I immediately emailed Rachel, and actually I texted Rachel and Mike Costco and said that we needed to cancel Symphonyland, which was supposed to happen the next morning. So the next morning brought on a flurry of activity, obviously, because we had to cancel musicians. The performance was at 10 a.m. We had a musician driving in from Pittsburgh. And so there was a lot of phone calls, a lot of back and forth. But we all came into the office that day. And I also had to work on canceling Divergent, which was the next night, and then also Symphonyland, which was the following Saturday. We also had the following week, we were scheduled to do the performance with Augustin Hadelich, which was our collaborative performance with the Tuesday Musical Association. So there was a lot of stuff that had to kind of be orchestrated through. And then that afternoon, we heard that there was the first confirmed case in Stark County. And at that point, I said, that's it. We're closing up and we're going home. So I told everybody to take what they thought they would need to work from home. And we shut the office, put a sign on the door, and we all left. So over the next few days or so, we worked on canceling things. I had a lot of conversations with Tuesday Musical to try to reschedule that, which we did. We had put that in May, because at the time we thought, 30 days, it'll pass through, Everybody else was saying May 1st, that was the day we were all going by. So we canceled everything through May 1st. We decided that it was too difficult to reschedule the early April performance, but we were hoping that we could get in the end of April performance. So we just kind of sat back. The staff then adjusted to our new normal, which was weird and strange. We started meeting on Zoom. We had twice weekly staff meetings. Sorry, I need to get a drink of water. So we used to be able to see each other every day. We'd have conversations. You could walk into somebody's office and say, oh, I've got this idea for a performance, or whatever that was. And now all of a sudden we were stuck in 7 different locations, and we couldn't see each other all the time. So I started investigating how we could keep together as a staff. And we first worked with Slack, which is an online thing where you could kind of chat with each other, and instant messaging and video chatting. But then we found Zoom, and Zoom is a little bit easier to use as far as having a staff meeting like this. And then we switched off of that too. So now we're using Microsoft Teams, which seems to be our favorite so far. But that gives us the opportunity to just chat. So Rachel will text me and say, you know, what do we think about this? And sometimes we say, well, maybe we just need to talk about it. So we'll do a video conference. And it's pretty easy. You just click a button and it instantly calls the person and then their face appears. So it's a little bit like walking into somebody else's office. But then in the meantime, I also really started studying COVID. And I think I probably read any and every scientific article that I could possibly find, because I knew that I was going to have to be making a lot of decisions upcoming, and I needed to make sure that I was making them as best as I could. I say now that my poor family is now the sufferers, or maybe not, of me knowing way too much about this disease, because we don't do anything. We don't go anywhere. Honestly, this disease scares the crap out of me. And my kids all, you know, we are all mask wearing. We don't go out of the house. We barely go to the grocery store. I went from driving 30 miles a day, well, 60 miles a day, 5 times a week, and filling my gas tank up once a week, to I filled my tank up 3 times. So that kind of gives you a little indication of how little we're going out in public. But I had a lot of conversations with the staff about this, with Gerhardt, with board. The board has been very supportive of this the whole time. The health department, I'm thankful that I'm good friends with the health commissioner. So he and I have had several conversations. And the school district, I mean, we are in their building. So I had a lot of conversations. But I realized in April that this really wasn't going to go away. So I started thinking about the 40th season and for Gerhardt, and what we needed to do if we wanted to be able to have a season. So it was at that time that we changed the season from 7 concerts down to 5. So those who had already renewed their subscriptions got a call. I got a call from Nathan in the marketing department, and said that we were changing that. And everybody was pretty satisfied with that. Nobody really complained. But really the reasoning behind that was twofold. One, at that time, the governor was saying to avoid gatherings of 100 or more. And 2, that we were kind of suspecting that the flu season, which is, you know, midwinter, was going to be bad again. So I eliminated concerts that were going to have more than 100 people on the stage. So that would have been Beethoven 9 and Leningrad. So that's why those 2 concerts went away. We then and my thought was, worst case scenario, if we were able to work it out, we could possibly still do the other concerts, but live stream and without an audience in the hall, if we were still allowed to have 100 people in the room. So we kind of reshuffled things around and gave the 2 fall concerts, had backup dates in June. And it allowed us to then have a break in the middle. So we would do October, November, December holiday, and then January, February had nothing, and nothing until middle of March. And so that's kind of where we settled for a while. Although I, in my heart, kind of was thinking there's no way we can do this. Even if we had to socially distance the hall, I had a map. I figured out how we would seat people. I had a diagram to figure out how people would enter into the building and walk through the hall, so it was one way. And I had figured at the time we could probably seat about 200 people in our hall, which normally seats 1,400. But I didn't honestly think we could handle it as an organization, the capacity to make sure that everybody had their temperature checked when they walked in, and make sure that people kept their masks on in the hall, and to make sure that the musicians were safe, and to make sure that the staff remained safe. That was kind of what was keeping me up at night. I really honestly didn't know how we could do it. We rely a lot on our volunteers. And if you've been to one of our concerts, you've seen our Symphony League ladies ushering for us. But those women are all in, most of them are in the age demographic that really should not be exposed to this. So that concerned me. I had conversations with the school district again about the hall itself and about the HVAC system of the hall, because I just wasn't sure that it was able enough to handle making sure that the air was clean enough to stay indoors for a long period of time. And the business manager of the school district said, I wouldn't want to be in that room for any length of time with people who aren't wearing masks, or somebody sneezes, because I don't think it can clear it that fast. So that was a big concern to me. But in the meantime, the staff was staying upbeat. We're still having our twice weekly Zoom meetings. Rachel and Nathan had come up with a lot of different ideas. The sunshine is so distracting to me. I'm really sorry. But we came up with the selections for staying home, and we had a lot of orchestra members who had volunteered to record little bits of music for us to post on YouTube and post on Facebook and share with our audience. And we'd had some rebroadcasts that we got permission from the orchestra to be able to play again that had been performed on WKSU previously. So we were, coming up with different ways to engage with our patrons. We also did the Listen at the Library. Rachel created our Listen at the Library series that we were supposed to have done way back in March, but we actually did it virtually, and that's available on YouTube. Matthew, over the summer, our assistant conductor, created a whole series of musical theory lectures that he did, which were wonderful and had a great following. We did a couple other kind of like conversations almost, where like Gerhard and I talked about creating a season, and Matthew talked about creating a special presentation that he did a few years ago with the Symphony and a ballet company. So we were doing a lot of fun stuff. Rachel did a virtual kinder concert, which was, the teachers really appreciated at a time when all the kids were sent home and were looking for video content. But it was hard because I went from running an orchestra to being a part-time epidemiologist, part-time future teller, and partly working really just to keep the staff spirits up. There were days when one of them would text me and say, "Oh, I can't make myself work. I'm so unmotivated." And we all went through that, and I'm sure if any of you who are working from home still, there are some days when it's really hard to make yourself work. So, I think the staff did a great job keeping each other's spirits up. We really, I think, look forward to our weekly Zoom meetings. We've now cut down to once a week. But, we're still here, but we're still at home. So it was in July when I decided that it was probably best to postpone our fall season and push it into the spring. I've been named to a Ohio task force with other orchestra executive directors to help each other really to kind of find out what other people are doing. And we were all saying there's no way. And at that time in July, the governor had not come out with any reopening for performing arts halls. So we didn't, at that time, we couldn't, even if we wanted to, we could not have had a performance. And we'll talk about that in a little bit because he did finally come out with some guidelines. But I really felt it was important for us as an organization to at least let our subscribers know that we would not be doing anything in the fall. So we let everybody know. And so now at this point, we have nothing on the calendar until March of 21, which was a hard thing to do. It was really disappointing for us as a staff. And we know that our subscribers look forward to it. And they want us, we hear from a lot of our patrons saying, we want to come, we would come and wear a mask. But in my mind, I just don't think the risk is low enough yet. The studies, there have been a lot of studies. Finally, they did scientific studies over the summer looking at the aerosolization of instruments and how the air comes out of an instrument. So they recommend, most instruments are fine 6 feet apart, but trombones, they recommend more. The most recent data that came out, oboes are really bad. Their air really hangs in, the aerosolized particles really hang in the air for a very long period of time. And, you know, from everything we've read, or I've read, and all the reports that are coming out, it's really those minuscule particles which are the biggest cause of this disease. And they're the ones that are inhaled mostly through your nose, not your mouth. And the longer you are in a space where those particles are, the higher the risk of you developing COVID. So for me to put musicians on a stage, socially distanced, we can fit about 36 of them. And that's spread literally across the entire width and depth of our stage. So imagine, you know, when you see the orchestra on the stage, they're right in the center. And, you know, there's still, except for when we have, you know, 85, 90 people up there, but there's usually space on the sides. There's a little space in the front, a little space in the back. But now it's spread out. So there's 36 or so people on the stage. But they're out there blowing into their instruments, and all these aerosolized microscopic particles are floating in the air onto a stage where the HVAC system is questionable. And then you bring in an audience breathing, and, you know, it's just not something that I wanted to do. So now the governor has announced that we are allowed to reopen. His guidelines are that you have to limit it to 15% of capacity. So for us, that's 216 people. That includes what is on the stage. So if I have 36 people on the stage and I'm allowed 216, do the math. That's not a lot of people in the audience. So right now we have I think we were at 238 subscribers have renewed. So how do I decide who's allowed in and who's not, first of all? But second of all, let's think about the finance aspects of this. Because people say, okay, well, you're allowed to open. Why don't you open? All right, well, put 30 people on a stage. And so the musician costs are probably going to be about $35,000. Then I've got marketing costs. And then we have to have some sort of program of some sort. So all in, you know, we're probably looking at about $45,000, maybe $50,000 to put a concert out. Now, income-wise, with those, how many people do we have on the stage? 109 or 180 in the audience. We're looking at less than $7,000 of income. It just doesn't work. So I can do it. But I want us to be able to come back. I want us to be able to come back live with people in the hall and a full amount of people in the hall. If I put out a concert with all of that loss, there's no way we're coming back next year. So I have to balance that and look at it very carefully. Right now, we're great. Actually, financially, we're doing pretty darn well. We've had a great amount of support from our donors this year, which has been wonderful. And we were very lucky to get the paycheck protection loan. So we're not gonna have to lay anybody off. We're gonna still pay people. We have money to pay unemployment for the musicians. Technically, they're not laid off, but we will pay their unemployment benefits. But this way we will be able to come back. We will be able to come back very strong. And that's a lot better than what some other orchestras are facing. I know a lot of them have had to lay people off, and that makes me really sad. Gerhardt was very generous and offered to take quite a substantial pay cut until we come back, which helps a ton. I took a small pay cut for the first quarter of the fiscal year. But we both did that because we want our staff to remain whole, because the goal for me is really to use this time to really look at how we can make ourselves stronger. Now I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but so that's where we're at, I guess. We could live stream, but the cost of that is also pretty expensive. We're the American Federation for Musicians, which is the parent union for our local union, is working through some issues with that. Right now we can do it, but we have to pay each musician an extra $95 for the service. So it adds up. You know, obviously, remember my financial model of 35 musicians on the stage. To live stream it, you know, it's going to cost even more. So I'm not trying to be gloom and doom. I'm trying to explain where my head is, and to hopefully allow you guys to understand kind of where we're at and what we're thinking. So,
Michelle.
Yeah.
So a couple people were wondering about how your background has prepares you normally for a season.
Okay.
How does it prepare you normally to do your job? And then comparatively of this year, and what have you had to learn extra? What have you talked a little bit about it, like all the reading you've done and
yeah,
to other people and getting other people's expertise and that sort of thing. But how do you feel your background would prepare you normally for a season versus what this year has been?
Okay, that's a good question. So my background is, for those of you who don't know, I got a degree in music history and theory, which I did just because I liked learning about music. I didn't have any clue what I was going to do with it. And then right out of college, I worked for a few years with Cleveland Opera in the marketing department, which was fun. And then I stayed home with kids for about 12 years, and then came back and worked in marketing here at the Symphony. And then here I am. That was 9 years ago. So I think my background is, I think I'm very fortunate that I'm pretty much right down the middle, right and left brained. So I very much have that artistic heart and soul. I played piano for many years, sang for many years. But I feel have a pretty good business sense. So in the past, that's helped me a lot, because I was really able to see both sides of a situation, whether it was, union negotiations or the budget. I have a dad who's a math teacher and a brother who is an accountant. So I had many calls to them for help with Excel when I needed it. So that always got me through. But I think now my personality is, when there is a crisis, I get very calm. It doesn't matter what it is. My kid gets cut on the head and they need stitches, or if, a tornado blows through and knocks a tree out of my house, whatever it is, which has never happened, but I'm just using it as an example. I get very calm. And so when this happened, I just knew that I had to remain calm. And I had to remain calm for the staff, and for the musicians and the board. I didn't want people to be panicking about it. I didn't want them to be thinking that we were going to, have to close our doors forever or whatever. I just wanted people to know that if it was going to be okay. I love seeing cats on Zoom, by the way. They're always very happy to be on Zoom. So yeah, I think that's really what has gotten me through now, is that I have been mostly able to remain calm. There are some days that are really bad. Not as much anymore. I've gotten a little calmer, but early on, April and May, it was really rough. But thankfully, Gail Martino, who is our board chair, has been extremely helpful, and has been unbelievably supportive of me, as has the entire board. But she has been very supportive of me at times when I really needed somebody to say, okay, look, it's gonna be all right. So I think that answers the question.
And you also took a development course during.
Oh, I did yeah. So that's something I didn't even mention. So, one of the things that had to happen, we lost our development person last fall, and I had been planning on hiring this spring, and I had actually just started looking at resumes right before we shut down. So with everything that's gone on, there's just no way that financially it's not the smartest idea in the world to hire a development person when you're not bringing much money in at the moment. So I decided I am also head of development now. And that is not where my strong suit was at all. So over the summer, I enrolled in an online fundraising course through Boston University and spent 12 weeks learning anything and everything about fundraising. So far I think it's paying off because our annual fund is already higher than it was last year. So I think we're doing all right.
I think just like a small perspective from like the staff, I think I remember getting that text on March 10th, because it was all of my programming was like, Rachel, anything, stop everything you're doing. And the kind of scariness that was that, especially as this being my first year in the position, suddenly all of this stuff I'd been doing was just gone out the window. But, the amount of support I got to do things virtually and to do things online and to get all that rolled out, I think really paid off, especially when the only content we had for months was educational stuff. But I think, from the staff perspective, it's been a very intense learning experience for everyone. I think we all have backgrounds in what we do, and we all got degrees in what we do. And, but nothing in college or nothing at grad school or nothing in the real world says this is what you do when there's a global pandemic. There's not a class for that. So it was a really big learning curve, but I think Michelle handled it very well. I know on more than one occasion I would call her and we would be freaking out about just the world. And she was able to calm me down. So that was very, very nice. Someone just asked, Claudia just asked, whose cat is very adorable.
I know. We see you behind the cat.
Claudia just asked about tryouts. So normally, are you involved with arranging all of those? I know that's kind of in Mike's world, but I think the question about arranging auditions for the orchestra, but then also what we're doing this year.
Okay, good. So normally I don't have much to do with auditions at all. That is definitely Mike's job, and he sets up a schedule, puts out all the information. I usually show up and sit through some of them. Especially when it's a principal audition. Last year we were auditioning something for a principal.
Trumpet? Clarinet?
Oh, it was clarinet. Thank you. So I sat through a lot of clarinet auditions. Sometimes I'll just go and just listen. It just kind of depends on the year. But this year we actually decided to not do any auditions. We decided that because we couldn't do it safely in person, logistically and safely, it was just going to be a nightmare. And if we didn't lose a lot of people this year, so we didn't really feel like we needed to, we could wait. And the union was fine with that. We also didn't want to do it virtually anyway, because the sound quality isn't very good. Internet connections can be spotty, whatever. It just brings in a whole batch of problems. So we decided to not do auditions at all. Now, the Youth Symphony, on the other hand, they did do and are still doing virtual auditions, and the Youth Symphony is going on virtually. And that's something that I'm really proud of Rachel, talk about creating something completely new. She's created an entirely new virtual experience for these kids. 3 different groups, 3 different experiences. And I think it's going to be really cool. I think kids are going to enjoy it. They're excited about it. They're going to put together a virtual performance at the end of the semester. So you know, it's just all about rethinking what we do and trying to do it differently. So.
So Michelle, I'm not sure if you're ready for just a question time.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
If anyone has any questions, you can either throw them in the chat, or if you want to turn your microphone on, you can ask the question out loud. That's perfectly fine as well. I see that you guys just turned on your microphone. Go ahead.
As it turns out, is there any plan for Matthew's theory class to be shown again on YouTube? Carol and I missed that.
It is there. Yeah.
It is on YouTube currently.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
If you go to Canton Symphony, just type in Canton Symphony Orchestra on YouTube. There's a bunch of different playlists of all of our different content. So everything from the Behind the Music series that we did this summer is there as well. So you can watch all of those. You can watch all of the music theories. And Matthew and I have been talking about actually doing more music theory this fall at a slightly higher advanced level. So the one that we did this summer was designed for people who didn't have any musical background. So it was anyone could understand what we were talking about. And I think this in the fall, Matthew wants to do one that's a little bit higher level to get a little more into the nitty gritty of the stuff that you hear on stage. So that's all on YouTube. If you have trouble finding it, you can feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat and I can direct link.
I'm glad to know that, because I also wasn't able to watch that, and I really wanted to. I think it was on a Wednesday night or something, and I'm not free. The time was 6 to 7, and I was occupied.
Yeah, I just put my email in the chat. So if you have trouble finding it on YouTube, just email me. It's Rachel Hagemeyer at cantonsymphony.org. So feel free to go ahead and email me.
And I'm pretty sure they all live on our website too. There's links on the website to all of the virtual stuff. So.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I see, Claudia, you had another question about musicians. Michelle, if you want to talk a little bit about musicians, the salary versus per service idea.
Oh, okay.
Actually is.
Okay. So our musicians are part-time musicians and they get paid per service, which means they get paid anytime they are on the stage or doing a rehearsal or performance. So no matter where it is. And because they're union, we also pay into the union pension. So our musicians only get paid if they're playing. So unlike, Cleveland Orchestra is an all salaried orchestra, some orchestras are a mix of both. Like they may be a little bit of some are salaried and some are per service. But for us, we're all per service. So in our orchestra, if someone would play every service available to them, they would make less than $10,000 a year. It's like 5 to 8, depending on what musician or what instrument they have. And many of them play in multiple orchestras or have a daytime job or they teach or whatever.
Also, thank you, Ed, for being here. We have 88.5. Ed is here. So he just said,
oh, yeah. Hi,
Ed. I think a question that I have a lot, or when I was learning about orchestras, is the relationship between an artistic director and an executive director and how that works and what is the balance. And some orchestras do it very differently. I know, if we look at a San Francisco model versus the Cleveland Orchestra versus everyone kind of does that relationship differently. But how do you and Gerhardt kind of navigate that relationship?
I am very lucky to have Gerhardt as my music director because he and I are definitely much more of a partner situation. In a lot of orchestras, Akron, for example, the executive director really doesn't have anything to do at all with what happens on the stage. Everything comes through the music director. With us, I'm actually very fortunate because I have quite a lot of input on the classical series, and then the masterworks or the pop series is all me, with input from the staff, and the Divergent series was all me. So I'm very, very fortunate because, he and I trust each other. I know that I can call him with, any concerns, any comments, and I don't have to worry that he'll get offended or upset. It's just a very open and sharing relationship, which is really, really great. And I know that I wouldn't have that in most other orchestras. So I'm pretty lucky. So yeah, so when we're creating a season for the classical series, like I said, we hang out over breakfast. We're usually there for 2 or 3 hours. And we listen to stuff and we talk about stuff. And I'll say, I love this piece. I would love for us to do that. And we'll figure out a way to put it in. So a lot of times, I would say a good third to a half of the season has a lot of my influence in it, which is pretty cool. And I know it wouldn't be the case with other orchestras, but we all know that Gerhard is a very different type of person because the ego is not there. So yeah.
That is very true. Kind of a more general, probably a harder question to answer though. What is, do you think, the most challenging part of your job? That's probably a different answer this year than most years.
Yeah.
But what is the most challenging, but then also like the most rewarding or your favorite part of being an executive director?
Okay. For me personally, I would say the hardest part of my job is being the head of human resources. It's not that I'm bad at it. I don't enjoy having to give staff reviews and have those conversations. But also it is rewarding because I do enjoy, and especially now I've gotten to see a lot of growth, especially in Rachel and Nathan, who are new to the staff, because I enjoy coaching. I enjoy coaching them to do better. I enjoy seeing where their skills are as they kind of grow and mature and allowing that to develop. So that for me is very rewarding. Also at times the union relationship is a challenge. And it's not because it's a bad relationship. I've actually worked very hard and I think we actually have a very good relationship. But it's still a union. And so there's always rules that we have to work within, which makes it hard sometimes. A lot of people don't understand, why we can't do a certain performance. But it's, there may be reasons why, maybe cost prohibitive, or we can't record, or, whatever it is. But it also it's a really cool relationship, especially now that, I meet with our orchestra committee. We've been meeting every couple weeks via Zoom, and talking through things. And I do have musicians now who will call me with ideas and email me with thoughts. And I think that's pretty great. So that's really rewarding to me too.
Becky asks, are there any plans for programs for schools to use this year? Which is kind of a me to you question.
Yeah, it really is more of a Rachel question.
There are, I'm currently working on, we do a instrument petting zoo program where we take instruments to schools and students can actually like touch them and play them. Obviously, that's a very bad idea right now. That's not a good idea. So I'm working with, I have four education assistants this fall that are music education students in colleges right now. And we're going to work on putting together a instrument petting zoo video where we will have a video of all of the different instruments so students can still get to know them and see them. And then I will just be on Zoom talking with them. So it'll be a cut between a video and me. And since I can't play every single instrument, I can't make a video of myself demonstrating all of them. I can play a few of them, but not all of them. So we're working on that. We are also working on creating in the fall, we always do a young person's concert, which is for grades 3 to 5. We cannot do that in person for obvious reasons. Again, also because most schools are doing very weird schedules and there's no field trips allowed, that sort of thing. So we're currently working on putting together a virtual offering. So we are going to pull recordings from the past 2 years of the CSO, and they're going to have video of Matthew conducting while the music is playing. We're going to have some animation. We're going to put together this wonderful video with Matthew reading the script, and that way teachers can show it in their classroom when they would have been able to go to the symphony and see it. So they're still going to be able to get at least that experience. And for the students who are at home, they can just watch it at home, and maybe students who don't normally get to see this will actually get a chance to, because it'll just be free and available for anyone. So someone asked my position. I did not introduce myself at the beginning, which was my mistake. My name is Rachel. I am the manager of education and community engagement. So I run all of the educational programming and our community engagement. So that's what I do. But
She's been very busy.
My job is very, I will have great peaks of where I'm crazy busy for 3 days, and then I will have nothing to do for like 2 days. So it's a very up and down sort of thing right now. But something else that we are doing is, actually someone asked about the Gervasi stuff. The only performances that we've been able to have since March have been at Gervasi Vineyard, because they are allowed to reopen and they're allowed to have things, and they can socially distance outside while it's been really nice out. So we've actually been able to have, tomorrow will be our 3rd concert at Gervasi, which you reserve a table, and the tables are socially distanced from each other, and we have 1 or 2 musicians playing and talking. And it's been a really cool opportunity for musicians to talk candidly about what their life has been like for the past 6 months, and people can ask questions. Last time we had Benjamin and Erin Reedhead, who are married. They played duets, and they got to explain how the French horn works and how the violin works, and it's been really fun. So that's been fortunate that we've been able to at least have that. But again, that's the only thing we've had since March, which has been difficult.
We're also in the educational realm. We are working on creating a podcast. This is something that we've all kind of talked about doing. But when all of the Black Lives Matter started coming out, the staff really wanted to do something. And so we spent a couple weeks researching and talking with other artists and other musicians. And we have come up with, creating a podcast called Orchestrating Change. And it's going to be talking about and addressing really diversity and inclusion in the classical music world. Mm-hmm. We're really excited about it. We have a great lineup of guests. So we're going to record probably 12 different episodes, and they'll be released. We're looking at a January release date, but this is a way for us to hopefully impact the classical music community in a different way. So we hope that you all will enjoy those soon.
Yeah, that's been exciting. We're going to start a recording for that soon. Wonderful. Does anyone have any other questions? You can put them in the chat, or you can turn on your video and ask it out loud. Give a couple seconds. No, okay, so I think just kind of a wrap-up thought question about all of this is, how do you think that this year, this is such a big question, and I know we've talked about this, but how do you think that this year is going to impact orchestras moving forward? No, and it's a really tough question. And I know in the theater world and in the music theater world, that is a huge question that people are really asking right now. But how do you think that this is going to transform, I mean, from the pandemic perspective, from the diversity perspective as well, maybe? How do you think moving forward the orchestra world will transform from this?
Oh, okay, that's a big question. Well, I think, I don't know, it's almost like a restart button in a way to me, because, you know, orchestras across the country, and we're not alone in this, are really facing, you know, and you've all seen it if you come to our concerts, a decline in our audience, an aging of our audience, a change in what our community is like. I mean, we know that Stark County is not exactly growing, and Canton in particular is definitely not growing. But we all as orchestras need to be thinking about ways to stay vibrant and alive and relevant. And the League of American Orchestras, which is kind of like our go-to umbrella organization that we all belong to, has been preaching this for years. Never with any answers, of course, because nobody has them. But I think that this is going to allow us, it's like a pause. I mean, and you know, everybody's talked about the COVID epidemic as the great pause, you know, when we all shut down for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or however long it was, and really just kind of reset and everybody started baking bread and hanging out with, dinners at home with their families and all of that. And I think that that's kind of how we have to look at this. It's a great pause for the orchestra world and for the performing arts in general. I mean, we're not alone. But I think it's going to give us the opportunity to really look at our model and say, is this really the model that's viable to keep us going for the next 25, 30 years? Is this what we need to be doing? How can we do it differently? How can we do it better? And how we can impact our community in a different way. And I think that, the podcast is one of those things where we really wanted to make an impact, and we very carefully thought about it and came up with something that we think will be impactful. It would be very easy for us to put 3 masked musicians on a stage and it would probably cost us about $5,000 to do a live stream. But is that the right answer? Is that worth it in the end, just to give live music to our audience via a stream? Or is it better for us to wait and do something that is meaningful and impactful and at the end of the day, going to make a difference? So
I think that sums it up. All right. Well, if no one has any other questions or any other thoughts, thank you all for being here today. And we are going to have our next conversation will be on October 12th. So you can see Gerhardt. And he's going to be talking about, we mentioned that this is going to be his 40th season coming up. So it'll be him talking about his 40 years and what he's done and what he wants to do and everything in between. So that's going to be on October 12th. It'll be the same format because of course he's not here. He's in North Carolina or wherever he is.
right.
So we're going to be doing that in October, and we hope that you all will join us.
And that happens to be, just as a last little note, his exact 40th.
Does it really?
Yeah, that is the date of his first concert with Andre Watts, October 12th, 1980.
I do have a question. Are these meetings on the same number? Are these recurring meetings, Zoom sessions?
No.
Or is it different each time?
They're different each time. So each time you sign up, you got that email that has the link on it. And then you'll get a reminder the day of with the link again. So each day it'll be that link. So it'll be a different one each time.
Are we supposed to have signed up for all of them?
You sign up for them individually. So if you can make one, you can't make the other. And then after each one of them, they'll always be put on YouTube. So of course, if you can join us live, you get to ask questions and engage and that sort of thing. But if for some reason you aren't able to make it, it will be on YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Yep.
Thank you, Rachel and Michelle.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
It was very, very informative. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you
You're
all.
welcome. Thank you for being here. It's nice to see faces that I haven't seen in a long time.
All right. Great.
Thank you very much.
You're doing a